When you think of southern Italy, you think of Naples, Pompeii filled with fun and loving people, but never in your wild dreams will you think that there exists a single man who is a threat to a whole mafia. This is exactly what happens in the third installment of the movie The Equalizer 3. On one fine day we see a man. He seems to be a very private man, a seemingly simple man who goes by the name Robert McCall. Initially it feels like he's an ordinary man with a boring life. He works at a hardware store and just leads his life in a simple way. It feels like we're looking at a 9-to-5 person who's living paycheck to paycheck like most of us do. But what you don't know is that this boring man hides a dark secret. He has a set of skills that normal people like me and you cannot even dream of having. He has the skills of a United States Marine Corps. Where it starts. In the beautiful city of Sicily, a crime lord named Lorenzo Vitale arrives at his vineyard with his grandson and finds lots of bloody dead bodies lying everywhere. He goes inside alone and finds 3 of his men, with our guy Robert McCall seated and with a gun pointed to his head. Vitale asks McCall what he's doing there, and McCall replies with a dangerous voice that he was there for something that they had taken that wasn't theirs. McCall gives them 9 seconds to stand down and move back before he proceeds to kill the 3 goons and then leaves Vitale crawling away. He then grabs a shotgun and blasts Vitale in the head. This is what you would call a rad move, making friends. After absolutely destroying the crime lord, and we see McCall is walking with a bag. The grandson of the crime lord sees him. McCall notices this and McCall tells him to stay in the car and stay put. But it's of no surprise that the boy shoots McCall in the leg and runs away. McCall then musters up enough strength to start driving. He drives far enough until he loses consciousness. Somewhere far away, he is then found by an officer, Gio, who takes him to the local doctor in his town, Enzo. Enzo suggests to Gio to make sure that nobody gets to know what happened by asking him to lie that McCall had a bad fall, in case anyone asks. There was something off about this whole situation that made Enzo take such a decision. After a number of days later, McCall wakes up to a sore but healed body. McCall learns that he's in the town of Altomonte. McCall now befriends his savior Enzo, who helps him find a place to stay, and he eventually becomes good friends with the officer, Gio, and his lovely daughter Gabby. McCall slowly starts exploring the places around him and stumbles upon a local cafe and becomes friends with one of the employees, Amina. Later, Enzo asks him if he's a good or a bad man. McCall has an internal conflict in his mind and replies that he's not sure. McCall is devastated and haunted by horrific images of his late friend Susan Plummer and recalling how he killed the men at the vineyard one by one and caused a bloodshed. After fighting an internal battle, McCall later calls the DIA and speaks to a specific officer, Emma Collins. McCall tips her off about what he found in the vineyard in Sicily, and what happens? He suggests that she lead an investigation at that place. Emma decides to go with her partner Frank Conroy and a team of DIA officers, where they find euros worth a whopping $11 million. Now that's a crazy amount of money, right? Along with this crazy discovery, they find something that you can guess pretty much easily. Yeah, a huge stash of narcotics, which probably explains about how someone could afford and earn such big stacks of money that was found. Oh, and a friendly reminder to stay away from such stuff, kids. Now let's get back to the story. Emma now puts all her efforts and traces McCall to Altomonte, and she now starts explaining McCall and briefs him over what happened and what they found at the vineyard where the scene took place. The brothers. Amidst the hustle and bustle of Altomonte's lively market streets, we encounter a not-so-friendly character named Marco Quaranta. He's not the kind of person that you'd invite for a cup of tea. No, Marco is a thug, and he's causing a scene near a fish vendor's stall belonging to Angelo. He starts threatening and bullying Angelo, the fish vendor, all because Angelo didn't give Marco what he wanted. Marco's words are loud and he can be heard throughout the market. This scene starts to get the attention as he warns Angelo that if he doesn't have what Marco desires, the next time around, things are going to take a nasty turn for Angelo. The air in the market starts to get tense and people around start to feel the discomfort. Angelo, caught in the crossfire, is left in fear that Marcos and his men will trouble him at the stall again. The market, once a place of commerce and community, suddenly becomes a place for a power play. This reminds us of bullies from our childhood, right? In the town of Altomonte, Marco and his brother Vincent are like the leaders of a group called the Camorra, a scary gang that causes a lot of trouble. One day, Marco goes to see Vincent because Vincent is talking to a couple who don't want to let go of their building. Vincent wants their building for a hotel so his gang can get bigger. Now, this is where things get really bad. The couple is reluctant to sell their land and they strongly say no to Vincent. But Vincent's not a guy who takes no for an answer. He's like a devil in human form. Instead of respecting their choice, he does something really terrible. The wife's dad, who needs a wheelchair to move around, becomes a target for him. Vincent, without a heart, orders his gang to do something awful, something that's truly beyond what we can think when we think of doing something evil. They throw the wheelchair-bound father out of a window and leave the poor body hanging there, and it's like a nightmare for everyone to see. This was meant as a warning sign to anyone who dares to defy the brothers. In our opinion, this is one of the most gruesome scenes in Hollywood. Vincent, he wants everyone in the town to be scared, so he leaves the dead body as a warning. It's like he's saying, "See, this is what happens when you don't do what we want." It's a dark way of showing that anyone who goes against him and his brother Marco will face really terrible consequences. This scene in the movie establishes that the town of Altomonte is trapped in horror as long as these heartless brothers are alive. The whole town are living in fear of what they might do next, or specifically, who will be the next target of the brothers. The threats. As the sun was blazing in the midday, Gio gets an eerie phone call saying that Gabby left school early. Gio is left spellbound, fearing the worst and fearing the danger. Gio calls a teacher to inquire about it, to which the teacher replies one of his officers already picked her up. Racing against time, Gio runs home and finds Gabby and his wife Chiara being tortured and being held captive by Marco and his men. His worst fear had come true. His heart froze in fear. Marco and his men proceed to threaten Gio and this family to make sure that Gio stays out of their business for good. Later one night, McCall wakes up to people in chaos and running around to a fire alarm that was raised. But to our dismay, we discover that this alarm was a sign of Angelo's shop being set on fire. Helpless, he and his wife can only be held back as they watch the shop go up in flames and their life crumble down before them. McCall observes that the reason behind this incident was none other than Marco and his men as they sit there and watch the poor family's demise. This makes McCall mad, real mad, and he now knows who to go after. He calmly decides what to do next. This is what we call the calm before a storm. In the next part of our story, we switch to another scene where Collins is busy in a news report about a terrorist attack in Rome. The news is pointing fingers at Syrian terrorists, but Collins, with her experience and lessons that she's picked up from her past, knows that that's not true and is not convinced. Even though they found drugs from Syria at the vineyard, she smells something fishy. In a quiet conversation with Conroy, she reveals what she feels is actually happening. It's like she's got a sixth sense telling her that this isn't just a simple case. She believes there's a bigger plan, and her gut feeling is telling her something else. It's like putting together a puzzle. Collins, with her sharp instincts, senses that there's more to this situation than meets the eye. And just as she shares her thoughts with Conroy, it all starts to make sense. Just like a puzzle piece being put together, everything starts to fall in place, and just like that, her hunch seems to be true. Vincent discusses with his brother Marco about his plans to take over the entire coast with their own businesses and create a monopoly, and he reveals that the terrorist attack was part of this heinous plan. The terrorist attack that had sent shockwaves through the city wasn't a random act of chaos, it was a calculated move. Meanwhile, on the other side of the story, Collins, our unsuspecting hero, is faced with a different kind of storm as he ends up getting caught in an explosion in the city planned by the evil brothers. Collins seems to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. As Collins attempts to get into a car, she gets caught in a blast. Thankfully, she's alive and hospitalized. Action! On the other hand, fate seems to take a different plan for Gio and his family. Marco barges into a restaurant where Gio is eating dinner with his family in an attempt to persuade or maybe even threaten him to get boats from Solace. But little does our villain know that there is a silent protector watching him. Marco then feels that someone is watching him, but who is that? It was McCall staring at him. Marco goes and confronts him. Being the confident man, McCall lets him know clearly what will happen if he does not stop his threats against the family, so he grabs Marco's wrist and compresses a nerve in his hand that causes him pain until he gets his goons out of the restaurant. We clearly know who's the boss now. But people just don't learn their lesson this easily. Outside, Marco tried to retaliate, but one of his goons gets run over by a van as the driver, who is another henchman, has already been killed by McCall. He kills the last man before fighting Marco, breaking his arm and getting him to stab himself to death. Who knew such a calm man could be this dangerous? The evil rises. After Vincent learns about the death of his brother, he's devastated. The news of his brother's death hit him like a wrecking ball. In this time of remorse, he is visited by a vicious Chief Barella, who is another criminal that supports the mission of the Camorra. Barella makes threats, not realizing what's in store for him. The room, already heavy with sorrow, witnessed a shocking turn of events. The next thing you will see is Vincent stabbing his hand and then having his men cut Barella's hand off before sending him to the hospital to get it reattached. Vincent, now angry and with a sign of revenge and retribution he had unleashed on the chief, wasn't content with mere vengeance. His eyes definitely told that he wanted more of it. With a newfound determination, Vincent plans to get revenge for his brother's death, exactly like what a classic villain would do. Following his decision, Vincent and his men go to Altomonte and attack Gio, firing a gun near his ear and threatening to kill him and his family in hopes to lure around his brother's murder. McCall then comes out and warns Vincent. He asks to take him and leave everyone else alone in peace. Just as Vincent is planning to kill McCall, bang! Enzo fires a gun of his own. This causes a chaos in the building and residents and neighbors rush in to take photos and videos of the scene. Vincent, fearing that this might cause trouble with the police, flees with his men behind him. The final fight. Vincent retreats and starts planning again. He begins to make plans to attack Altomonte again the next day, but fate had different plans for Vincent. Unfortunately for them, McCall has found them first and is already at their place. Furious of what had happened, McCall then proceeds to eliminate them one by one. In the next scene, we see Vincent waking up when one of his goons' blood drips on him from the ceiling before the body crashes through the glass. Vincent tries to flee from fear, but ends up getting knocked out by McCall. When he wakes up, he finds that McCall has given him a lethal dose of the drugs found at the vineyard. This drug gives him a few minutes before his heart gives out and he dies. Vincent tries to run into the street, but McCall slowly walks behind him, like a predator that knows the inevitable death of its prey. Suddenly, Vincent gets hit by a car. The crime lord stumbles a little distance before he finally dies. The truth. McCall decided to pay a visit to the hospital while Collins was staying, with determination on his face. As he entered her room, there was seriousness in the air. He opened up to her, revealing the truth that he had kept hidden. Our hero confesses that his journey to Sicily was not only for the justice, it was rather a personal mission to get pension funds stolen by ruthless criminals. In a silent exchange of understanding, he handed over a heavy bag with weight of money. McCall leaves Collins alone in the room. Later, Collins goes to Boston, where the McCall was talking about. The family are happy, emotional, and grateful to find that their hard-earned money had been returned. All seems to settle when she goes back to work, but our hero has one last surprise in store for Collins. Collins receives a little black book from McCall on all his personal gatherings with a note saying, "Your mother would be so proud of you." Collins then looks at a photograph on a desk, revealing she is the daughter of McCall's friends Brian and Susan Plummer. Happy ending. In the scenes that follow, we witness McCall basking in the joy of Altomonte's football team's win. The cheers of victory create a warm atmosphere, and slowly but surely, McCall finds a sense of belonging. This town, once unfamiliar, has become a place that he can now call home. Filled with a newfound happiness, McCall makes an emotional decision. Instead of moving on, he chooses to stay in this town, surrounded by the friends that he's made through his journey in the movie. The idea of spending the rest of his days in peace is what he's looking forward to. It's a moment of quiet victory, not just against the Mafia, but even against the inner battle that he fought when he lost his friends. In Altomonte, among friendly faces and the noise of celebration, McCall discovers a home for himself, a place where he can finally find peace and make a fresh start. A quick recap with a conclusion. A tale of a simple man with a humble life reveals a dark past when his life is pushed to go back to his old ways. When he stumbles across a Mafia when on a personal business, only to be found and taken care of by a local police officer and doctor in the town of Altomonte. He befriends the residents, only to learn that they are being terrorized by the Camorra, a Mafia group led by brothers Vincent and Marco Quaranta. McCall also works with an agent named Emma Collins over drugs found at a vineyard in Sicily which belonged to the Camorra. After Marco threatens the livelihoods of several families in Altomonte, McCall introduces himself and his skill set by killing Marco and his men. In a twist of events, McCall finds Vincent's home and kills his men before forcing him to overdose on his drugs, ending the Camorra's reign of terror in Altomonte. An eye for an eye move indeed. It is only later that McCall reveals to Collins that he was in Italy retrieving stolen pension money from a man he previously knew. Collins personally delivers the money and is revealed she's the daughter of McCall's friends Brian and Susan Plummer. McCall ends up staying in Altomonte with his new friends. Crazy what one could do for friends. This is a story filled with action, twists and turns, which makes sure to keep you on the edge of your seat while watching and give you an overall experience. The Equalizer 3 is a must-watch for all the action fans out there.